Okay, so what we're doing here is we are going to take this little molding and we're going to run it from the center front all the way back. Now it looks like this is 4 feet, and so just measure from here to here, roughly 4 feet. So half of that is 2 feet, so I want to take this thing back 2 more feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my image. I'm actually going to draw a path from here and then here. In fact, you know what, let's just go back 2 more feet, 24 inches. Okay, and so what I want to do is select this path. I'm going to show you something here. I selected the path, and I'm going to take my follow me tool and touch the geometry, but it doesn't stream it all the way where I want it to, because it's sort of in the middle of the path, right? So what I need to actually do is take this geometry and shove it, move it back. Now I can't really do that because it's all connected to my path. So again, what I've done here is make a selection, and then I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to paste, and that way I can just stick it at the end where I want it. There. So now I'm going to select my path as I like to do. I like to pre-select the path before I use the follow me tool. And so there it is, nice connected path. Grab my follow me tool, touch on the geometry, and boom, there it is. So it's done a nice job. Okay, so let's go ahead. It's a little odd orbiting when something is on the ground and you're trying to picture it as not being on the ground. But anyways, let's turn the image back on and see what is next. So it looks like we have to do that. We want to do that again, maybe with this geometry right here, and then this geometry we can push all the way to the back and just extrude this thing back. All right, so we've been given this profile, and that's what we're going to use to create this part of our geometry. Let's do that first. So let's go ahead and simply we can just trace this out. So I'm just going to trace it by eye. Again, you should take time and actually figure out what these dimensions are that makes sense to the 2x4. But just for the sake of time here, I'm just going to do this really kind of fast. And there we go. And so I have a profile. So I'm going to take that profile and I'm just going to move it on over here. Okay. And I have, now here I could just extrude this thing and then I'm going to show you a couple ways. Well, I'm going to show you one way of doing it, but you'll see there's another technique involved in this that has to do with Boolean geometry. So the first thing I'm going to do here is literally I'm just going to extrude it, push-pull it longer than I think I'll even need it. Okay, this is the rough and tumble way of doing it. And so there it is. It's nice and long. I'm going to select it all, make a group out of it, and then what I want to do is actually rotate this thing into position right along here. Okay, so the first thing I do is I want to put it flat on the ground, so I'm looking at this thing head on. A way of rotating is I can rotate by clicking and holding. So I'm going to click and hold, and then while I'm still clicking or while I'm still holding on the left mouse button, I can move around, and it lets me reorient my axes so that I can now, if I release and click again, it lets me put this thing down. It takes a little bit of practice, but again, let me show you what that was. So here I just click and hold, and then move my mouse around until I get the axes that I want, and then release. And then I click another spot and rotate. Oh great, now it's doing the little circle thing, catching up. Yeah, there we go. And then I rotate, and then when I get it to where I want it, I click again, and there it is. It's exactly where I want it. Okay, so how do I get this at the right angle? Well, I might know the angle, but I might not know the angle. Let's assume I don't know the angle, okay, and I'm just trying to like match it up to the image. Let's just take my move tool, and I'm going to grab this front portion of it, the top portion, and I'm just going to grab it, and I'm going to bring it over here, and I'm going to say, well, that's where it's going, and click. There it is. Now you can see it's down into the image, right? It's underneath there, but that's okay. I'm going to rotate again, Q for the rotate tool. Let's look at this thing in plan. It's going to be a little easier. Okay, so here it is. I can click on this point, and I know that's my rotation point. I click once, come over here to reference the item that I want to actually rotate, click again. And then I start moving it in the general direction that I want to rotate things. And I'm going to get it pretty close. And we'll say that, again, for time, I'm not going to be too particular, but we're going to say that looks good right there. Okay, awesome. Okay, so it's solid. We're good to go. What I probably would have done is I might have done this a little bit differently, but I'm going to do it this way to show you that you can also use Boolean geometry. So Boolean geometry is where you can take one mass and intersect it with another mass to either create a new one or to eliminate from the other mass. Like you can do subtraction. So what I'm going to do is see how here I'm going to turn off the image for a second. I actually want to eliminate this part of the model. See, because I want that to be flat. And likewise, let's go back to the plan. Likewise, you can see from the image that I need to shave this part right here, like straight across, and get rid of all of this geometry, right? So let's start by just making a big old box here and a big old box here. Let's, again, for time, I'm being a little bit sloppy. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to make a giant box and a giant box. And let's just grab these and we will push them down so that they completely intersect our geometry. I don't want them sticking out. That's too low. There we go. Now let's turn off the image because it's kind of getting in the way. Okay. Now what I actually want to do with this geometry is I want to place it. It's taken some of our center line, but that's okay. I actually wanted to place this inside this group right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to Command X or cut it. Looks like it's all gone, which it is, but it's on the computer's clipboard. I'm going to go into this group and I'm going to paste it in place. And so there it is. And now here's a really cool thing you can do. I can select everything, like right here, I can select all of this, and then right click and say intersect faces with selection. I'm going to do with selection, okay, because I just want it to interface with selection. Now I can start to erase some of this geometry out. I could grab my eraser tool, right, and just start erasing away geometry. And you can see that as I erase, I am left with the desired geometry, the stuff that I actually want. It also leaves I've left some scars. Wait, I actually don't want all of this. There we go. Okay, so we get rid of all of this stuff, get rid of all of this. Make sure you're not erasing stuff that's hidden. Like if I were to erase something, at the wrong angle, I might have erased out part of the back of this thing. So just rotate around to make sure you're erasing stuff properly. Okay, so now if I exit out of that, and let's turn our image back on. Go ahead and come back on any minute, and there we go. You see it's looking good. Alright, so we're in a good spot. We still have some of this old geometry. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that geometry there. Okay, and I'm going to redraw. I'm going to just redraw this center line. I found it to be helpful, just to see it. Okay, we can see now we've got to place this thing in space. So we can see that it should be way out here. And it actually sticks out by a certain amount, right? And so that certain amount is going to be whatever this profile is. Right, so let's take this profile and make it, which happens to be this profile, right? That's the bottom part. So we could drive it from here, or we could drive it from here. It should be the exact same profile. I find it easier to see it here, but let's just do it from here because then we know that it'll fit. There might be a little bit of difference in the actual drawing. So let's go ahead and start drawing out this profile. So to do that, first you want to be cautious that, you say, okay, well, here I go, and I start, and I come up to here, and then I come up to here, and I go here, and it's looking good, everything's looking great, and then I come up here, this is looking good, and maybe up here. Alright, and let me just turn off the image so you can see. So it looks like I did a nice profile. And then I do this, I orbit, and I see that it's all wonky. So you have to be careful because when you were drawing, you were snapping to things that are in 3D space. All right. So you actually have to be very cautious of that. So I'm just going to undo that, undo, 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 and I'm going to make sure that I'm on a certain plane. Now to do that, my trick is I just create a plane. Now, even though this drawing, this photo is on a plane, it's not geometry. And so I can draw lines right through this thing, and SketchUp doesn't think that I have to worry about it. It's just an image. It's not actually geometry. I need to actually draw geometry, like literally draw geometry like this, for SketchUp to think anything of it. So I'm just going to draw geometry right on the surface of this photo group. All right. And then obviously I can't see through it, so let's go back into X-ray mode so I can see through it. And let's pop this into plan view. And very good. Now what I'm going to do is I could actually, at this point, I could actually sort of rotate a little bit like this, and I can see where I'm drawing my geometry now. And I know that I'm drawing it on a planar surface. And again, I'm kind of going a little faster here than I really ought to be, just for the sake of time. Okay, it did a little weird snap thing, so that's fine. It's okay. It's better to do a little extra line out there and then come back and get that line. It's better to overshoot your geometry than to not overshoot your geometry and then to get this weird line sticking out in the middle of space somewhere. Okay, so it might be kind of difficult to see what's going on. There's obviously different ways of doing this, okay? But let's turn off X-ray. That'll make it easier to see what we're doing. Turn off X-ray. And we can even turn off the image for a second. And you can see now that I probably want to complete the profile. Let's complete it to here. Now it looks like I needed to go a little longer. I'll just do it there. And let's start erasing extra geometry we don't need. Okay, and you can see that it's not closed yet. So we need to close it. And that fills in nicely. And then we've got an extra line we don't need. And there we go. And so there I've got my other profile. Now it might have been easier to just grab it off that other image up there because it's separate geometry, but I'm going to go ahead and group this geometry, okay? So right click, make group. Okay, let's turn the image back on, the visibility, and we can see that he's got it coming along the front and then shooting off to the back. So we'll do that just like we did it with this other tiny little piece of trim that was under there. And this time what we're going to do is we'll rotate, we can rotate this, well no, we're not going to rotate it, why bother? I'm going to go ahead and turn the image off again, and we know that we need to come back to this point, so we need a path that goes from here and goes all the way back to here. Again, that's just a path that we can use for extruding this thing. And then I'm going to move this geometry to the back of that path. Okay. And then I can... Now it looks like this is too far back. Looks like I did a little mess up here. I'm not sure what happened there. But let's go ahead and group that and bring it back to where it should be. I'm not sure. At some point I must have moved that. You guys probably all saw it in the video and were like, no, don't do it. So here we're going to let's bring this geometry back to where it needs to be. Okay, we don't need the path to be like that anymore. Okay, so I'm just gonna redraw my path. Okay, it's just to be safe here. Let's just redraw it. I'll draw it along here. And I'll draw it along here. Okay, there we go. So now we have a path, and we can select that path, and then use our Follow Me tool. Select this geometry. Oh, it doesn't work. Now the reason it doesn't work is because this geometry is in a group, right? And so I'm not actually touching the geometry, I'm actually just touching the group, the container. The geometry is inside. So I can do one of two things. I could just explode it here, or I could go into here and redraw my path and do it all in here. I'm actually going to get rid of this path that I drew out here because it's just extra geometry I don't want. I'm going to go into the group. I'm going to draw my path again properly in the group. And I want this in a group because if I need to move it around, or eventually if I were to do materials, if I wanted to do a different material here, it'd be nice to have this separate from everything else. So let's go ahead and use the Follow Me tool now, and now we touch the geometry and boom, comes out looking great. Okay, nice. And escape out of that group. Let's bring this group forward where it needs to be. We can find out exactly where it needs to be by turning on the image and looking at the section. And the front of that needs to line up with the front of this and overhang it just slightly. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and bring that up. Okay, and you'll see. Okay, I may not have done this perfectly. You'll see that this wants to be just sticking over that. So there we go. Alright, so it looks like I could do a little bit better job here by cornering this off. So let's do that. Let's take a little more realistic approach to this. Let's do it out here. We can push, pull. There, kind of shave it off, make it look a little more realistic. And I'm just going to reverse this face because it was a back face. It didn't look too good. Alright, now is this perfect? No, but this is looking good. This is working. This is working for us. Boy, do I have two of these? What's going on here? I have a mystery on my hands. Let's come in here. What was that? Interesting. Not sure what that was. Let's see what this is. Oh, okay, okay. I see what I did. I made this geometry and then I remade it when I did this profile. Okay, so sorry to confuse. I'm just going to get rid of that geometry. Everything I need is right in this one sweep that I made. So that's fine. I just needed to make the beam, and then I did all this at one time as well. Okay, so that's fine. Sorry about that. A little bit confusing perhaps, but I think we've got it sorted now. Okay, so we know that this roof is going to sweep back as well, so let's just go ahead and push-pull it back as well. Okay, very good. And then we have some kind of infill in here, so what we can do is literally just draw it in, and we can go ahead and now I can match the angle that I'm drawing on here just by, again, inferencing. I just kind of run. I'm not clicking anything. I'm just running my line tool along this line, and then when I come back to where I need to be going, it inferences, and I can even hold down Shift and then click, and then there we go. And so now we've got a nice face to this. I'm actually going to give it a little bit of depth just because I know that there should be some depth to that. So there it is. Okay, so right now, I'm just going to get rid of these center lines. I'm going to get rid of that center line. So now you can see that we have a nice chunk of our model already built. And let's turn on the image again and see. It looks like there's another beam going from front to back. So let's get that beam in there. Let's turn the image off. And we'll go ahead and we'll just take this same beam, and I can rotate copy. So again, by just tapping on Option, it lets me. It's just like the Move tool, right? When you hit on Option, it turns the Move tool into a copy tool. And so same with this, I can rotate copy. So while I'm rotating this thing, I'm also going to make a copy of it. So I'll go ahead and click, rotate, click, and there I have a copy. Now obviously I have to move this in, and there we go. And this isn't quite right, so I'm just going to go in here and push-pull to that point, and there we go. I've got my beam that's going back, and I've got my beam that's going along the front. I've got a column here, and this is great. Now this whole thing is going to be repeated, so let's turn the image back on. This thing is going to be repeated from one side to the other side, and from the front to the back. It's all this stuff is totally sort of bilaterally symmetrical. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of this geometry that we've made, and you know what? I'm even going to put that face that we just did into a group. Okay, I'm going to turn off the image for a second, just make it a little easier. Let's get rid of our guidelines, go to Edit, Delete Guides. I'm going to grab all this geometry and I'm going to make it a component because I want this to occur 3 other times for a total of 4 times in my model. So right click, make component, and we'll call this corner unit. Why not? Okay. Let's go ahead and get rid of this geometry. We're not using that. Let's get it out of there. So at this point, what I can do is I can copy this. Okay, it's a component, right? And I copied it, and I can right-click and I can say flip along the red, and then jam it right up against itself, and there I have the front. Look at that. I only modeled half of it, and now I've got the full thing. And I can also take both of these, and I can also copy those. Very good. Right click, flip along red. Red doesn't do anything, so undo that. Right click, flip along. Now green's not going to do what we want, so undo, right click, flip along, blue direction. And there we go, we get satisfaction in that last one, and we'll grab this point and glue it to this point. And there we go. We have a complete model. Now, at this point I should point out, at this stage, let me point out, this is pretty detailed, right? We're doing a lot of detail. Can you imagine trying to develop a design going through all of this effort? Instead, wouldn't it be a lot easier just to grab the overall dimensions, pop this thing up, to put a quick roof on it, and then throw this thing into perspective and fill in the drawing yourself, right? Instead of having to do all of this stuff, just do a massing model of this. And at the end, I could do a massing model of it to show you how easy it is. But anyways, here we are. Let's turn the image back on, and now all we have to do is the shelving, basically, these little units here that stick out of the side and off the front. And so we've got a profile for the front. We know that's going to go all the way along the front. And we've got a profile for the side because we can kind of see it sticking out here. And so we'll use that information, and we can use the information in the plan also to locate it as well. But for now, I think this is really what we need. So I'm just going to trace this, and I'm not going to be terribly precise like I've been saying here because just for time, but I'm going to put a ground line in and then go up 3 feet or 36 inches just to get, I want to get some dimensions accurate here. So let's just put in a counter, we'll put in, and we'll draw this whole thing in, and then we'll put it in X-ray mode and erase stuff out, or draw stuff out of it. So we'll go ahead and take that, go up. So I'm going to draw this all the way and go all the way. I'm going to come back in here and do that, and do that. Okay, and then erase out the geometry we don't need. Let's go ahead and get this in, that in, cut that out. Now ideally that's going to be the same profile as the base. So let me take a little bit more effort here and make sure I'm going in by 1 inch and coming down by 1 inch. Maybe I'm missing something. I thought that was an inch and an inch. Maybe it's not. Oh well, I'll just trace it by eye then. There we go. Erase geometry. Let's just get rid of these guidelines. Erase this, and now it's one solid piece. Oh, not quite. Let's erase that line. Now it's one solid piece. And we can extrude that. I'm going to assume that this actually goes all the way around. This top part goes all the way around. I'm just going to do it on the front. I may not get to do this entire thing just for time. You're getting the idea here. So let's erase that and erase this. We'll grab our profile and we can extrude it, and let's go into plan and just find out how long we need to extrude this thing. Approximately, let's just do it 5 feet. If it runs into itself, that's okay in this case. So we'll just extrude it up 5 feet. Alright, doesn't look like much because we're in orthographic view. We can also be designing in perspective view. Sometimes that's actually very helpful for getting into little areas. Let me turn off the X-ray to make it easier to see what's going on. Wait for it. And so if we need to get into little areas, sometimes it's helpful to have it in perspective. But here we go. Let's make this a group. And let's go ahead and we will rotate it down into position. You know, if it's not rotating, you can also orbit to get a better view of what's going on. Just rotate that 90, and then we'll place it. Let's just place it right there, and then slide it back. It looked like those were supposed to align in the section, or let's see. No, I guess it was held back a little bit. Okay, that makes sense. So we'll just go ahead and just pop it back a little bit. Again, I did this really quick. These would probably align. All of this stuff should probably align. It's my fault for rushing this. So I don't want to disparage this person's design as being incorrect. It was probably just fine until I came along and ruined it. But I am going to extend this whole profile into the geometry just a little bit. Okay, there we go. And let's turn off the image. And we can see what's going on here. Oh, it doesn't look quite right. Oh, I guess it is quite right. It's just that this turns a corner. Okay. So it does go all the way around, I bet. Alright, so I've made a mistake, I think. So what I want to do is I'm going to try and fix it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, let's just Command C, copy this path, copy this profile, I mean, and I'm going to get rid of it, just delete, and I'm going to edit, paste in place. So there it is, sitting in space, all nice. And let's actually move it to be centered. And then let's create some geometry for a path. And then we will just run it along the path. Right, so here and here. I guess we only need half of a path. We don't need a full path because we can just mirror it. Okay, so here's the path. And then we can come over to the Follow Me tool and click it. And then you see what's going on here is it does a... this is actually becoming a little bit annoying in how I'm navigating, but you can see now we're able to fully rotate it around where it needs to be. Okay, so let's grab that, make it a component, because we've got two of these, and let's go ahead and, at this point I'm going to show you a plugin that I have. You can figure out how to do plugins, but this little plugin's called Mirror, and it makes the whole job of mirroring things easier. And there we go. It's mirrored, just like that. So again, honestly, I might not have read this design correctly while doing this. I could be wrong on this. For better or for worse, here it is. Maybe actually what happens is this actually extends out here. I'm starting to get tired and hungry. You guys are probably starting to get bored. I think you get the basics of how this works. So I'm going to end it here. I'm going to end modeling it here, or trying to model it accurately. And I'm now going to show you just then quickly. Let's go ahead and hide the image. I'm going to grab this whole thing and make it a group. And we're going to rotate it up into position 90 degrees, and I'm going to grab the move tool and I'm going to stick it right here in the origin point, and I want to make sure that I have a person in this view, And so I'm going to do that. This is called a face me component. Wherever you turn, it faces you. That's kind of nice. And at this point, I want to actually now make some scenes. I want to make a scene. So the first thing I want to do is let's just do an isometric, looking at it. So I just click this little isometric. If I want an isometric from a different angle, I would put it towards that other angle and then click this. There we go. But I liked it where I had it. So here we go. And an isometric is not perspective. So you have to turn perspective off. Put it on parallel projection. There we go. That's an isometric. Technically that's the isometric, I guess. And you know, it just takes where you are approximately and then it will push it into the angle that it needs to be. So there's your isometric. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this zoom all or zoom extents, and there it fits it in nicely. And actually, one thing I forgot is I need to make a nice base for this thing, a nice little ground plane for this thing. There we go. And probably want to put a little bit more effort into that than I just did. You want to measure it out. You want to make sure it's maybe centered on a nice square or something like that. But there we go. Zoom extents. Okay, lovely. Let's hide these axial lines. Let's go to View and turn off Axes. There it is. Now, let's make a scene. Let's save this just how it is. And I'm going to go ahead and open Window and look for Scenes. And there it is. I had it up. And the Scenes dialog comes up. And if I just hit the little plus sign, it shows the scene. And now it's saved. Now, I can move around anywhere I want. And then later on, if I want to get back to that scene, I just click Scene. And it brings me right back. One of the things I find annoying is that it does that animation. So what I do is I go to, you can go to where it is, under Window, Model Info, I have a little icon for it right here, Model Info, and first thing, animation, I uncheck that. Now it just makes it a lot quicker if I need to get back to that point to just click it. There it is. Okay, so I've made one scene. Let's take a break real quick here and show you how we can get rid of these lines. You know, see what we did with these lines. These are our components, but I don't want to see those lines. So what I can do is I can just go in here and I can, now I'm going to show you something here. There is something in SketchUp where if you go into Model Info, there's this little area besides animation that I go to called Components. If you go to Components, you can actually turn things off and on just visually. So when you're modeling in a component, you can hide all the other components. See? You just click that off and on and all the other components disappear. That way, you can come in here and you can really, in fact, you can hide the rest of the model too. And you can really tweak things. You can see where you are. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to select these edges and I'm going to right click and say hide. And I'm going to come in here and select these edges and right click and say hide. Come in here, do that to these edges, hide. And then when I click out, you'll see that the edges have disappeared. I can do that along the front as well. So let's go in here and I'll select this stuff and say, now this is saying unhide because there are some things that are already hidden. And so I could just unhide, but then it unhides that line. So let's undo that. So really what I want to do here is just line it up, select this geometry, and now I get hide. And so that's hidden. Come in here, select this geometry, and now here, if you don't want to right click and say hide, the other way you can do this is with your erase tool. If you use your erase tool, press Shift, and then with Shift held down, if you erase a line, it just hides the line. It doesn't actually erase the line. Okay, so I could do that for the rest of this. I'll just use the erase tool, hold down Shift, and then click on all the geometry that I want to be hidden. And might as well do that as well. And then this last one, I'm just gonna right click and say hide. And when I come out, there it is. Now it looks like I probably shouldn't have gotten rid of this ridge line here. There's this one line here that I shouldn't have gotten rid of. Now you think, oh, it's too late, it's hidden, I can't unhide it anymore without unhiding everything. Well, what's cool is you can go to View, Hidden Geometry, and then it comes on and you can select it, right click, and unhide it. And then you can go to View and turn off Hidden Geometry, and there it is. When we click out, you can see the ridge line. It's kind of nice. Okay, so let's go back to scene 1. There it is. I can close model info now. And I can do the same thing to this bottom part. At this point, let's put on some shade, some shadows that will look good. We want them coming more or less from overhead, not casting too far, but just enough that it gives it some three-dimensionality. And so what I'm going to do here is, now that I've turned on shadows, I need to update the scenes. So here, I need to refresh the scene. So I'm going to update the scene, and I'll update everything here. Okay, so now if I turn off shadows and I come back to scene 1, it remembers the shadows and where they were. So I could turn them off, I could be doing all kinds of other stuff. When I want to go to scene 1, I hit scene 1, boom, it's just like I need it. Alright, let's also look at a perspective while we're at it. Okay, so let's take the camera and go into perspective mode. And you can see that you can quickly do a perspective. The best way of doing it is to come over to this tool here, position camera, click it, and then stand somewhere, click, and still hold down, but drag your mouse until you get a point, and this is the point you're going to be looking at, and then release. And there it is. Now, you're a worm at this point. You're standing on the ground. You can see that your eye height is 0. So we probably want to increase our eye height just by typing it in. I'll say 5'6", return. And now our eye height is proper. But with this tool, this little look around tool that's already enabled, we can now just click and look down. And now we can see what we're supposed to be looking at. Of course, we're a little bit close, and so we could do one of two things. We could move back, or we could increase the angle of our view. So we could go really wide angle here, and how we do that is go to the zoom tool and just engage the zoom tool. And with that, you can see down here on the right hand side that it says our field of view is only 35 degrees. Well, let's increase that to like 55 degrees. So I'll type in 55 and hit enter. And now we can see a lot more, but it's getting a little bit distorted. So let's actually use our feet and walk back. So here I'll just use the little walk tool, and I'll click in the middle of the screen and drag down, and it makes me walk backwards. If I click and drag up, it makes me walk forwards. And that's looking pretty good. Maybe we want to actually use our hand tool and kind of go over here a little ways. Maybe take the orbit, maybe orbit a little bit. It's looking good. Bring the hand tool here, orbit. That's looking nice. I get to see everything. We're still at probably a pretty good eye height. We can check that eye height again by hitting the eyeball, the look around tool. Shows that our eye height is still like 5'6". That's good. Now the thing that happens with perspective is it's distorting the verticals. The verticals should be straight up and down. Well, in this case, they might not be, because these verticals aren't, because there is a little bit of a taper to them. But these verticals are distorted, and they should be straight up and down. And so to get that straight up and down, we go to, when we get our camera view, our perspective, just where we want it, go to camera and do 2-point perspective. And that corrects for the wonky perspective you get, the 3-point perspective. It now is in 2-point perspective. And you might have to move it back into view, but you can see because it's 2-point perspective, no matter where I pan, it stays that 2-point perspective. Now I'm just positioning it somewhere on the screen to look good. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and get rid of our guides here. Let's delete the guides. Okay, so let's make another scene. Here we can just add plus, and now it's a scene. Let's go ahead and name these. This can be the perspective, and scene 1, if we go to that, is the ISO. Okay, and if we double click on these, we can go between them. Now here, if I want to change, maybe the sun isn't perfect for this view, so let's change the sun. That looks a little bit better, I think. So here now, in this perspective view, we want to go ahead and update this scene, but in this case, the only thing we want to do is affect the shadow settings. And so what I'm going to do is uncheck that and update, and when I go between ISO and perspective, whoops, I did it the wrong way, sorry. What I meant to do is uncheck everything else and only check the shadow settings. So let's just do that again. I kind of remember. That looks good. And so just the shadow settings, let's update those. Okay, so now as I go between the ISO and the perspective, the sun will adjust for each one differently. Okay, so now we want a front view of this thing. So we go into front view, and we make sure that we're in parallel projection because we're doing these elevations. And we'll do a zoom to fit or zoom extents. That looks good. And we'll adjust our shadows. And that's looking pretty good. And because we want to show off that this is an angle, and we want to show off that this is coming in at about a 45-degree angle. So that's looking good. So let's add a new scene, and we'll call this one front. And we'll update it, and this time we don't want to update the shadows, and so I'm going to hit update. And now if we go to perspective, we go to front view, we go to ISO. It's a little bit confusing as to what you check and uncheck when you're doing the update, but in this case what I wanted to do was uncheck shadows to make sure that and you can see the difference here. Look, perspective, the date is the 26th of the 3rd month, but in the front view it's the 11th of the 3rd month. In the ISO view it's the 30th of the 5th month. So you can tell that your sun is doing different things. Okay, so in the front view, now I want to do a side section. And so to do a section, I'm just going to go ahead and orbit out, turn off the shade and shadow business, and grab my section tool, and that's at the bottom here, the section plane tool. And as I hover over things, again, it sort of conforms to whatever the surface is. What I want to do is find a perfectly straight up and down, like vertical surface. I'll just use this. And then I'll lock the section plane in that surface by holding down Shift. And so now I can move around wherever I want. And I'll go right to the very center, and you can see that see how it clicks, or there's a little dot there, and I'll click, and now I'm getting a section right through my building. Now it's a hollow section. For now that's fine. What I can do is I can actually select this selection plane, and using the move tool I can move in and out and do a section anywhere. I can even, using the rotate tool, rotate anywhere I want, but I like it exactly where it is. The only thing I don't like is that this thing is showing. And so what I can do is I can actually take this and I can right click on this and I can hide it and it will hide. There's actually a tool for that. There's a little in here, if you go customize toolbar, there's a little thing called section display, and you can bring that up, bring it over here, and another thing called section cuts. So if I do section cuts, it turns the section cut entirely off. If I do the section display, it shows or hides the section, and that's what I want instead of hide. So let me just unhide the last thing. Sorry to confuse, but if I just use this, I can actually hide the section plane a little more effectively, because then I can turn it off and on if I want. If I actually grab it and right click and say hide, it actually hides it for good in the model no matter what. So that was probably bad advice the first time I showed you that. So just use this little thing, so like the hide section plane, and then let's go for a side view, and if you get the wrong side, just go to this one. There we go. Let's turn on some shadows and let's adjust our light. Let's get it so that it's actually doing something valuable. That looks pretty good. And we'll do a zoom extent. That looks pretty good. Another way to get another scene in here is just right click on a scene that you already have. Right click and say add. And there it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this and again turn off shadow settings and update. So that way if I go between the front view and this section, it remembers where I had my where I left my sunlight, and it updates everything else. So we'll call this section. And then I could do another one where I just turn off the section entirely. Right click and say add, and call this one side elevation. And so now I've got an ISO, I've got a front view, I've got